Thank you, thank you. So last presentation, so we'll try to keep it short and sweet. And thank you, Patrick, for the nice intro to people analytics. So how many people in the room have people analytics teams at their organizations? A couple handfuls. How many people even know what the heck people analytics is? Okay, that's good. So I'm here to tell you that a lot of what you heard is not true, because people talk about people analytics like it's some new thing. It's BS. It's actually been around for decades and decades and decades. And it's actually IO psychologists that have been doing a lot of this kind of work. So a lot of what Patrick talked about in terms of talent acquisition and assessment, that's the kind of work that people with my type of background have been doing. So for me, the transition into more of a people analytics role versus a talent role was very seamless. So I'll spend a little bit of time just talking about what does it really look like to build a team that works. And it's hard, and I've done this 3 times in organizations, and it's always messy, and it's never perfect, and we've never actually gotten to utopia. I'm not sure it exists. So I'll just start out by saying that this is all very theoretical, right, in terms of what you really want to look like, but I think there's some really practical tips that you can use if your organization is going through this, or if you're thinking about moving into this type of role. So first of all, it's extremely important to build a foundation. I found in organizations that an HR executive will hear about this cool new thing called people analytics. They're like, oh my God, we have to have a team, let's just put it together. So they don't really even understand what is it all about, why do we do it? And so Patrick stole my thunder a little bit when he talked about, we do a lot of the work with talent to drive business results, right? So my point being here, with the people analytics function, we're not another HR team. What we are is a strategic business team. So I never tell people I'm in HR, no offense to the HR people. I always say that I'm a scientist or I'm on the analytics team, because the way I view the role of a people analytics team is we are there to help the businesses make money. We just happen to be doing that using the people and talent data that we have at our fingertips to help drive that. Because I think when you're in a business unit, you're in a line of business, you're always thinking about the bottom line, you think about the financial results, you think about products and commodities, and we fail to think about our people as commodities and products that actually help us drive value too. So in my mind, it's really around, we need to have a strategy that links to business results, right? So I have my little cheat sheet in here. So we have at AIG, we have a vision for our people analytics team, so I want to share that. We are a function that provides and enables access to the right information for the right people at the right time to help make fact-based decisions through the use of data. And what underlies that is really, we want to help the businesses make money. How do we use our people data, integrate it to the overall business strategy to help them do that? So what do you need to do next? So once you have the strategy in place and you know that it's aligned to the business priorities, you have to design and execute the roadmap. So for people that have people analytics functions in their team, and this is very similar to if you recall the chart that Jen had up with the maturity curve, there's a people analytics maturity curve, and there's a lot of different versions out there. But basically, on this side, it goes from not very strategic to highly strategic, and along the bottom is the type of analytics that you're doing. So how many companies are doing a lot of reporting? So you're getting Excel sheets, you might have a different tool, but you're getting headcount reports, you're getting a turnover report, you're getting an engagement report, right? You're getting multiple different reports, and all it is spitting data out at you. Think about moving from that kind of distribution of data along the path where you're delivering insights, you're starting to automate, you're using machine learning, you're doing predictive analytics, you're doing AI. How many people in this room here do predictive analytics at the organization or receive that? Okay, Patrick, anybody else? So it's a lot more common in the big, more mature companies. We have another one over there. It's actually, all the companies I've worked at, we have yet to get there. I think that's the ultimate goal, and I think people often kind of jump from people analytics. Well, I want a predictive attrition model. Well, there's a lot of work you have to do before you get there. If you start to shoot out these really fancy things too fast, I think you kind of get lost in the crossfire, and people don't understand it. So you have to start small, kind of design your roadmap. At AIG, we have a 3-year roadmap. It's an evolution, it's super messy, it's not linear, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we're continually evolving to get to that place where we're not just delivering data, we're actually delivering prescriptive insights that tell us what to do in the future. So it could be things like, we want to know what the workforce has to look like in 3 years to meet the needs of the business where we expect we're going to be. So it's not about moment in time, it's about predicting the future. The third thing I would say is around employee data management, and this is kind of the more boring stuff, but it's really around what is your HRIS system, what is your HR technology roadmap, and is that set up to enable success? So how many people have an HRIS system that they love, it works perfectly, the data is all beautiful, nobody ever complains about it? Exactly, nobody, right? And that's a problem everywhere. Google has the same problem, Facebook has the same problem. The problem's probably never gonna go away, but what's really important in the people analytics space is that you have to be really aligned with the HR technology process and roadmap as well, because that's going to enable everything you do. Jen spoke to the digitalization, right? You have to have a digital strategy that's going to enable people analytics, and that's things around your HRIS system is your single source of truth. So we have Workday, a lot of companies have Workday, right? How many people have executives in the organization who don't trust the data? Right? Nobody trusts the data, right? So how many people have Excel sheets, Google Sheets, I don't know, napkins with notes on them, notes written on the back of your hand that talk about the source of truth, right? So the goal with employee data management is you want to have one single source of truth. When I put together a set of insights, I want to make sure that everybody on my team, if asked to do the same thing, is delivering the exact same data. Because there's nothing worse than delivering some numbers to an executive and somebody else does it the same day and they're different numbers, and oh my God, it's a crisis, right? Like everybody's up in the air, the world's gonna end. So employee data management is really about getting that foundation. The data doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to make sure you're aligned. So staffing the team. So what does a team really look like? And I'll talk about some of the capabilities on the next slide. But the first thing you have to do is really figure out how are we gonna segment the work? So every company I've worked at, we do it differently. What we do right now is we look at kind of operational reporting. So there's some things that you have to report. I don't think they're very strategic. You're probably not gonna be making a lot of decisions, but having a headcount report is important. Understanding your turnover is important. Having engagement data is important, right? That's very operational, transactional work. You don't need to have data scientists doing that kind of stuff. Shoot that over to a very operational, transactional, shared services type of team, right? In my role as a people analytics partner, this is more of a consultant. And this is in theory, because we're still working towards getting to be real consultants. But this is aligning with business partners. So I would align with someone like Patrick, and we would say, what are the key business priorities and challenges that we're facing in our business? How can we use the people data to help us actually make better decisions about how to improve performance, right? So it's a consultative approach. We also have an advanced analytics line. That's kind of a misnomer because it's not really advanced yet, but the intention with that group, that's where you have the data scientists, where you're starting to look at what are the predictive models that we might need to build in the future to help us make better decisions. So the whole build, buy, borrow thing, right? So borrowing talent. So, I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So you can borrow internally from HR, you can borrow externally from HR within the organization. So a lot of organizations don't have a bunch of PhD statisticians running around, right? And that's fine. But you need to think about, in HR, do you have pockets of people with strong analytic capabilities that you can pull in? Now, the advantage of having internal HR people is the institutional knowledge of the business. So I'm 4 months into my role at AIG. Big company, very complicated. We have a lady who's going on maternity leave. I'll be taking over some of her work. She has an internal BI tool in her mind that she uses to make 90% of the decisions in terms of how she pulls, extracts, reports, analyzes data. I will never in a million years be able to recreate that. So it's really important to have some element of that institutional knowledge for those just really business-specific things that not everybody knows. Now, having said that, you can also borrow talent from elsewhere in the organization. So I'm guessing a lot of people, especially if you're in a bigger organization, you have a data science or a BI, business intelligence team. So those are really good places you can go to borrow some of the people who you might need to help design more advanced studies. Some of these are the more nerdy types, right, who like designing predictive models, programming, all that good stuff. There's different ways to build the team in terms of borrowing property from elsewhere in the organization. And then, of course, there's hiring talent. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the skills I think are needed for that. There's always, go outside, bring in what you need. So critical capabilities, and this is probably not an exhaustive list, and this is my list. So there are other lists that exist, right? But I think there's no one person, or very rarely will you find one person who actually has all these skills and capabilities. And if you do, please let me know, because I want them to come work with me, because this is kind of like the person that doesn't exist, right? So I think business acumen. So with the HR people in the room, do you ever hear HR is not taken seriously? HR is not a strategic business partner. How do we do that? So that's a common theme I've heard in most of the roles I had, is that HR is just not considered like a real serious business, right? We're not strategic enough. We need to move from kind of delivering stuff to being strategic and helping predict the future. So business acumen, I think, is a big part of that, and I think it's something that's really important in a people analytics team, because how are you going to help drive business value if you don't understand the needs of the business, right? Communication. So this is, how do I take the results of a study, an analysis or whatever, and translate into something that people understand, right? So you've probably all sat in a room at some point and heard somebody talk about something that's so high level that nobody gets it, right? So if you're communicating results to executives and they don't even know what the heck you're talking about, what's the point? So this is really fundamental communication skills, being able to translate data, information, material into stuff that's usable for the audience. So I'm going to argue, other people might disagree, that it's absolutely imperative to have an IO psychologist on your people analytics team. And I've gotten into arguments about this before, and I will never give my ground up on this one. But I think the background, and you can get this through experience, right? Not everybody has to have a PhD, obviously. But I think the fundamental knowledge about the theory behind talent, HR, performance, individual behavior is critically essential to help form hypotheses, to help understand results, to help talk about behavior. A lot of people analytics teams have engineering type backgrounds, which I think is great. I think that's bringing a different perspective, and I think that's really important. So I love what Owen talked about in terms of not being an HR person, but bringing a different perspective into HR. But I think when you're talking about interpreting talent data, you need to have a fundamental understanding of the theory behind that to really help translate it into actionable results. Data and technology. So people on the team at some level have to understand data systems. They have to be able to use technology. So anybody in here use Tableau? Aware of Tableau? Yeah, so that's a technology that a lot of people analytics teams, a lot of data science teams use. Really high-level Excel skills is often important, all that kind of stuff. So you have to have some level of skills in the ability to integrate, merge data, program databases. Leadership and consulting. This is another really important one, because I think as a people analytics team and like a consultant, the type of role that I do, we actually have to be able to sell what we do. We have to be able to articulate what is the hypothesis, what are the results. You have to be able to ask really important questions. So an executive might come and say, I need a turnover report. Well, they don't actually really need a turnover report. They just think that's what they need. So how do you help get to the root cause and figure out what is the question you're really trying to answer? Because sometimes, most of the time, they don't even know. Your job is to help them figure that out. And the last piece I will say is statistics and data visualization. So the whole data science piece, so I was really happy Patrick said that you have a team of data scientists working on some problems. I think in a lot of companies where you're very at the low end of the maturity curve, data science is going to be bored to tears, right? So we don't have one. We don't need one, absolutely, right now at AIG. I think as you move up the maturity curve, it becomes really important when you get into the fancier predictive modeling. And I'll close out with just some lessons learned. So this is the third company I've been with where my job has formally been around people analytics, although I would say I've been doing measurement and analytics probably my entire career. But it's really makes a lot of sense to start small. So I think companies will get this idea they need a people analytics team. They'll hire 20 people, start churning out stuff, and they haven't really thought about, well, what is it we're really trying to do? So as long as you have a small team staffed with the right people, You can actually have a huge impact right away. You also don't need $1 million to do this work. I mean, it's helpful, don't get me wrong, but you can actually start to deliver really high quality insights if you have the right people with the right mindset and you're aligned to the business strategy. This next one, I would say people analytics actually is not about HR at all, right? So I don't like the term HR analytics. I don't really like the term human capital analytics, because what we are is delivering value to the business. We are about aligning with the businesses to make sure the company is making more money. Let's be real. That's what it's all about. We're not about being an HR team. It should be a strategic business team that is aligned to that. And lastly, even though I say we're not about HR, HR is imperative in the process, right? Because HR across the board, especially the business partner type role, really needs, I mean, they're often the conduit with the business leaders, right? You need to be able to articulate and understand what the critical talent and business needs are, work with the analytics team to deliver on that, to form a strategy, so on and so forth. And with that, I'll close out.